I discovered 3 haunted true stories that transformed my nights into endless terror. I never should have opened that door. It was just an ordinary Thursday, and I was barely paying attention. The air was still. The lights flickered just a bit. A hint of something hanging over my small apartment like a dark cloud. That's when the dread set in. My routine was simple. I worked, cooked, and fell asleep to the sound of silence. But that night, it was different. As I settled into my worn-out chair, the shadows began to dance. They twisted in the corners of the room. The cold seeped through the walls, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. A whisper floated past my ear, soft and barely there, but I felt it. My heart raced. I could almost see the murky outlines becoming something more, something malignant. It began with a creak. A sound so small, but it filled the room like thunder. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Who was there? My mind raced with images of what could be hiding in the darkness. Was it the story of Sarah? The girl whose laughter turned to screams in an abandoned house, revealing a hidden horror? Or maybe Mr. Thompson, who vanished without a trace from the old diner, saying he'd found something that shouldn't exist. My pulse quickened as the memories slithered through my mind. Then, a soft thump came from the back of the apartment. I gripped the edge of the chair, my knuckles turning white. Something was not right. It was like I could feel the energy shift. A living presence nestled in the shadows. The sunlight had faded, and the night seemed to throb with an unspeakable tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a sinister breeze. My hands trembled as I tried to stand, to remember that I was alone. But the walls seemed to close in, pressing against my chest. I needed to breathe. As I glanced at my phone, the dim light illuminated the small screen, revealing an endless scroll of horror stories. Tales of people who dared to confront what lurked in the darkness. Had they opened doors too? And then, just as suddenly as the sounds began, silence enveloped the space. A thick, suffocating quiet that sank into my bones. I stood there, frozen in the stillness. My heart hammered. Did something move? I swore I saw a shadow shift to the right. My skin prickled with fear as I felt a chill sweep through the room. A hint of something foul and rotten invading the air. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway. I jolted, stumbling backward. A figure loomed at the edge of the dim light, and before I could scream, the door slammed shut behind me, the sound like thunder cracking in the suffocating night. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence roared in my ears as I stumbled back, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The door slammed like a judgment, solid and final, cutting me off from whatever had just stepped into the room. I could still feel the air shift around me, thickening with something unnameable lurking in the shadows. My pulse raced, pounding in my temples so hard that it drowned out all logic. Trying to reclaim my senses, I turned back toward the hallway where the sound had originated. It was dark, too dark, and despite the feeble light spilling from the tiny lamp in the corner, I couldn't shake the sensation that it was a barrier against an encroaching void, the very kind of void that swallowed the hapless victims of the tales I had read. A low growl vibrated in the distance, scraping against the walls as if the darkness itself was hungry. My heart pounded so hard I feared it would burst. I shook my head, forcing myself to think clearly, to remember those stories. What had they taught me? Stay calm. Don't show fear. Find the light. I grabbed the nearest lamp, its porcelain base cool against my skin, and swung it around like a weapon. Shadows danced and writhed, refusing to take shape. I could swear I saw forms elongate, twist, and then dissolve into mere darkness. But it was the eyes staring back at me from the black that stole my breath, a pair of glistening, predatory eyes reflecting the dim light as they focused on me. "Show yourself," I cried, my voice cracking but resolute. No response came, only the relentless silence that enveloped me tighter. It felt like being wrapped in a darkness so thick that I could almost taste it. Then, from the depths of the hallway, I heard it again, this time more distinct. A soft, mocking laughter, lilting and eerie, danced on the edges of my mind. It felt as if a whisper pulled at some ancient dread buried deep within me. Was it the essence of Sarah? The girl who had found joy in the shadows until she didn't? Something was undeniably wrong, and I was spiraling into the very hate-filled stories I had shrugged off as nothing more than entertainment. The presence in the room intensified, a suffocating weight that flickered along the edges of my perception, hinting at something beyond human comprehension. I steadied myself against the wall and, with a rush of adrenaline, dashed toward the hallway, the light from my lamp barely illuminating my path as I crossed the threshold into the abyss. The laughter erupted into a cacophony of anguished screams, echoing off the walls and blending into a symphony of despair. With each step, the air thickened, fighting against my progress. Every fiber of my being screamed to run back to safety. But I couldn't stop now. I needed answers, needed to know who or what was tormenting me. Then I saw it. A door at the end of the hallway, old and warped, standing ajar just as I had left it the night before. Light flickered from within. It was an inviting glow, a siren call promising warmth and respite. As I approached, I realized that it was the same door I had felt such dread in front of, an entrance I had meant to ignore. But something deeply instinctual compelled me forward. I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. Was this it? Was this where all my fears culminated? I turned the knob slowly, and as it clicked, the light spilled out, revealing a shadowed figure standing just beyond my periphery, cloaked in twilight, waiting. "Welcome home," it cooed, but the voice sent ice through my veins. Right before I could gather the breath to scream, I felt a coldness grip my wrist, a hand, clammy and unreal, tightening around me, and as I turned to face whatever unspeakable horror had come for me, the very world around me began to tremble and twist into chaos. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was that figure stepping into the light, and in that moment, I knew there was no escaping this. The darkness around me hot and suffocating. I clawed at the air, desperate for release. My lungs burned. The hand gripping my wrist did so with a vice-like intensity, its presence as tangible as the terror spiraling within me. I staggered backward, still caught in that moment of suffocating disbelief when I suddenly realized it wasn't just fear. I felt it was recognition. The figure, half glimpsed against the warm glow, felt achingly familiar. The soft laughter echoed deeper in my mind, dislodging fragments of memory. Was that Sarah's laughter entwined with the haunting tones of the shadow before me? It was impossible, yet the glimmer of her dark hair and the hue of her eyes became painfully visible, and I was flooded with the images of our childhood, the games of hide-and-seek bathed in moonlight, the giggles shared in our secret spots, the lingering shadows that once inspired innocent wonder. Why instinct told me to flee, and yet the sensation of belonging surged through me. "Sarah?" I whispered, barely able to voice the name that felt heavy on my tongue. "Did you miss me?" The figure stepped fully into the light, and I staggered back, comprehension pulling at my heart. It wasn't the Sarah I had known. This was a twisted echo, her features marred with discontent, and an insatiable darkness that reflected the very void of despair I had felt since her disappearance. "Where have you been?" I stammered, the tremor in my voice betraying my fragile composure. Each word wrapped itself around my throat, tightening like a noose. "You know, I felt you looking for me," she said, her eyes glinting with an unnatural hunger, searching for all the stories, every tale that echoed the unknown. "But did you have to disturb my peace?" She leaned in closer, her breath cold against my skin. I was content, lost in the shadows. "You shouldn't have ventured here. The darkness doesn't crave light, it wants flesh." The chill of her words seeped into my bones, and the sharp scent of decay filled the space between us, forcing me to recoil. You're not her," I whispered, fighting the urge to flee. "Oh, but I am," she insisted, her voice dropping into a raspy whisper. "I've transcended into something magnificent. Just like the stories, the ones you so carelessly consumed. You awakened what could have remained dormant. I'm what was waiting for you, at the edge of the darkness and light." Suddenly, her laughter twisted, morphing into anguished wails that ricocheted through the hallway. A chorus of disembodied souls ripped from the very depths of despair. I slammed my hands over my ears, but the cacophony burrowed deeper, clawing at my sanity. The joy I had associated with my childhood friend turned rancid in the night. "I can show you," she offered, her voice dropping into a pitch that dripped with venomous charm. "Join me. Let me peel back the layers of reality. We can be together, and your memories? They will serve a higher purpose." "No," I gasped, finding a surge of strength to wrench away from her grip. As I stumbled backward, the ground beneath me felt unsteady, shifting like quicksand, as if the fabric of reality was unraveling. I barreled through the doorway, each step pulling me further from her grasp, the light of the hallway flickering ominously as shadows flickered and danced around me. I wasn't quick enough. The shadows coalesced into an inky mass. I realized with a jolt that the walls of my refuge were being consumed, as the echoes of her voice enveloped my thoughts, urging me to turn back, to embrace what lay beyond the threshold of light. In a desperate panic, I sprinted down the dark corridor, each footfall swallowed by the relentless whispers that taunted me. The very essence of despair clawing at my thoughts, Sarah's likeness morphing and blending into a sickening shadow of something far worse. As I rounded the bend, my heart thrumming like a mad drum, the laughter changed once more, echoing hauntingly behind me, now a chorus of voices, an ethereal choir of the lost and the damned, and I knew instinctively that I wasn't alone. They were coming for me, their gnarled hands reaching through the cracks of the dark. Desperate to pull me back into their murky abyss, I flung myself toward the nearest exit, a door at the far end, as it began to close seemingly of its own will. Gritting my teeth, I hurled my shoulder against it, the wood splintering, but just as the last sliver of light framed my escape, a hand shot out from within the shadows, stronger and more insidious than any grasp before. It seized me around the ankle, pulling me downward, and as I tumbled, I could finally make out the faces' twisted resentments of those who had been absorbed, cries of endless torment flooding my senses. "Please, no," I screamed, the words torn from my throat as I plunged into a yawning maw of darkness. The world faded away, leaving only the terrifying promise that I was not merely encountering the lost souls. I was becoming one of them. The air was thick with despair as I plummeted into the void, swallowed whole by an insatiable darkness that clung to my skin like a suffocating shroud. My screams fell silent, extinguished by the overwhelming sound of a heartbeat, an ancient, rhythmic thrum that resonated in the depths of my chest. I kicked and flailed, but it was as if I were trapped in molasses, the shadows crushing against me with heavy intent, pulling me deeper into their insidious embrace. Time lost all meaning. Moments felt like lifetimes stretched into an eternity, the sensation of falling merging with the cold, unyielding fear that embraced me. I thought of Sarah, her familiar laughter twisted into a symphony of sorrow, the ache of her absence igniting every nerve in my body. The weight of my memories crushed me, and I gasped for breath that eluded me in this relentless, dark tide. Suddenly, I hit a floor so cold it cut through the pall of despair, sending shivers up my spine. I lay still for a moment, the numbing chill beneath me igniting an instinctual urge to flee, to escape this torment. I forced myself to sit up, my heart racing as I surveyed my surroundings. The emptiness extended in all directions, a spectral void punctuated by flickering lights that danced like fireflies in the eerie shadows. A voice dripped from the darkness, serpentine and smooth, weaving through the air like an oily fog. "You have arrived at the crossroads, dear friend," it purred, and as I turned, shivers coursed through me at the sight of a figure emerging from the ether, a ghastly thing cloaked in rags, its features obscured by a veil of shadow. The words of its name teetered on the edge of that ungraspable thought, and yet, dread drenched every syllable like blood on the ground. "What do you want?" I croaked, scrambling backward, but found no wall against my back, only an infinite chasm whispering taunts of despair. So brave, so foolish, the spectre hissed, a cruel smile stretching impossibly wide as if it savored my fear. You have wandered into our domain, where the lost linger, where the darkness feeds on hope and the echoes of the forgotten reverberate through eternity. My pulse quickened. What have you done to her? Each word tasted like sharp glass, jagged and unfinished. The figure laughed, a sound that chilled the marrow in my bones. Her essence is part of the realm now, dear child. She dances amongst the shadows, a puppet in the play of despair. But alas, it is you who have revived my curiosity. You behold the fragility of your own existence with a twist of fate. You are not merely a visitor. You are a banquet for my hungry kin. The fleeting glimmers of light faded away, and the echoes of laughter returned, morphing into pained cries, each moan carrying the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. The darkness shifted, and I could feel the coalescing of souls pressed against me, their icy fingers brushing mine, pleading for escape from the very shadows that now aimed to consume me. What do I have to offer? I whispered, desperation and dread coiling inside me, every instinct screaming to turn and run. Just yourself, the spectre crooned, tilting its head like a curious owl beneath the moonlight. You've seen too much already. Stay with us, and we shall quench your thirst for knowledge, your insatiable need to unravel what dwells in grim tales. The very shadows around me writhed with energy, whispering promises that both seduced and horrified. I struggled to escape their grasping hold, yet as they drew closer, I felt a sickening warmth spread through my veins, an alluring caress meant to draw me into a sinister embrace. Every ounce of fear battled against the compulsion to understand the mysteries that surrounded me. No, I won't join you. I screamed out against the rising maelstrom of souls swirling around me. My voice, once strong, cracked under the weight of their despair. As the shadows encroached further, the spectre smiled, mouth a gaping maw of despairing promises. You have no choice, sweet child. Soon you will learn that to seek is to surrender, and in surrendering you will find the ultimate truth. In that moment, the darkness erupted, a chaotic whirlpool that surged forth with a howling force like a tempest unleashed. I felt myself being pulled, torn asunder by the fray of agonized whispers that converged upon me, every voice a haunting recollection of hope transformed into horror. And then, in the heart of that suffocating chaos, I glimpsed something, flickers of light not far off, impossibly bright beneath the weight of shadows more profound than I could comprehend. Whatever they led to was a mystery, but if I could reach them, it could be my redemption. But the grasp of terror tightened as realization washed over me. The specters were not merely intent on dragging me down. They sought to draw in the very essence of who I was. And now I could hear their names in the chorus of torment. Sarah, they whispered, mingling comfort and despair. Join us, escape what you once were, embrace your true nature. As the tide of darkness surged, the light flickered tantalizingly just beyond my reach, a beacon of fleeting hope or the last vestige of my own contamination. Please, I cried, dread pooling in my stomach, feeling the very specter of despair draw closer, leaving me no recourse. And then I felt another presence surge out, cutting through the din, a gentle touch on my shoulder, solid and alive. Help me! The voice was unmistakable, and suddenly the darkness split asunder, joy mingling with agony as I turned and faced a flickering light. My heart shattered and rebuilt itself in a moment, as from the shadows beside me a figure emerged, but this time it wasn't the twisted shadow of Sarah. It was the girl I had known, her anguished expression desperate and pleading as darkness gnawed at the edges of her form. Trust me, she implored, her light flickering as the shadows clawed at her. But before I could respond, a wave of darkness surged beneath our feet, swallowing her cry, and in an instant, she vanished into the abyss with nowhere left to turn. I stood alone in a void of chaos, more desperate than ever, surrounded by loosening shadows. As two figures moved through the chaos, both reaching for me, I couldn't tell if they were friend or foe. One more step back and I'd plunge into despair, while forward only further into those dark enticing arms. That an anguished cry echoed in the void, drowning in an unholy chorus, as I choked on the terrifying knowledge that the harrowing choices I had fought against were no longer mine to make. The shadows danced, instilling a sense of urgency in the air that prickled the back of my neck. I inhaled sharply, mind scrambling for answers as those two figures persisted in their eerie approach, looming closer. I could already feel the frigid breath of despair curling around my ankles, cloyingly enticing. Each breath echoed with the desperate cries of the forsaken and those who had come to rest in this unholy realm. The apparition beside the laughing darkness flickered, coalescing into some semblance of humanity, a distant specter resembling a lost friend, yet heavily tainted by sorrow. Its eyes, once warm and inviting, now glinted like shards of ice, reflecting anguish that formed a haunting purity. "Is that really you?" I choked, stepping forward despite the instinct to retreat. "Sarah, is that you? Help me?" Her voice wavered, echoing through the oppressive silence as her form wavered like a mirage in a desert, beautiful yet tragically distorted. With every heartbeat, she appeared real but never truly tangible, an illusion grasping at the remnants of shattered promises. "You have to fight. They want your essence. But if you let them consume you, I can never return. We can't be together in this darkness." An unfamiliar dread coiled tightly in my chest, a warning against trust, against hope. The desire to save her battled against my instinctual aversion to the encroaching shadows, whose whispers had thickened into a cacophony of despair. They clamored around me, bodies of smoke and vapor merging into twisted forms, all pursuing a single purpose: to claim my will, to extinguish the dim light flickering within me. "Why did you come here?" I asked, desperation lacing my words. "Because you summoned me," she breathed, her voice a pained wisp. I couldn't just a harsh rasp stilled her sentence, a gaping mouth-like void stretching behind her, swallowing fragments of the shadows as it suffocated her light. The specter, my friend, trembled, her essence trembling through the ineffable divides that linked us, and still the darkness thrashed and howled, demanding my surrender. "Choose the darkness or choose the light," a new voice intoned from the depths. It was the observer, the figure cloaked in rags, its resonance crawling through my skull. "You are the pivot between realms, sweet child. Only through sacrifice can you reshape fate. Let her go," I screamed, my voice lost in faraway sorrows. With every nether wail, I felt a shred of my essence slip away, an unseen fragment of me claimed by the dilapidation of despair. The specter laughed, a sound merging loss with likeness, a celebration twisted in agony. "You grasp at straws. If you do not claim their strength, the darkness will consume you whole." I balled my fists, each emotion vivid and raw, rage battling against despair, the urge to protect Sarah fused with a primal need for survival. The shadows cawed, wrapping tighter around Sarah, peeling her from me, every wail vibrating through me like shattered glass. "Please," she begged, her voice cutting through the tremors of despair, illuminating the tunnel of horror. "I need your strength, but you can't let them take you away. You must remember." In that moment, everything shifted. Intricate memories flooded my mind, fragments of laughter, the warmth of hands clasping in shared moments, a fluttering light barely alive yet infinitely powerful. My connection to her was a tether I refused to sever, and with a deafening roar, I hurled myself toward her against the tide of shadows, igniting every pore with light born of my very essence. The shadows recoiled, snarling, whipping frantically around me like angry serpents, but I surged forward, fueled by the brilliance of resolve. I thrust my hands through the grasping tendrils, reaching for Sarah, my very being igniting in incandescent luminosity. I won't let go. Her eyes widened, glowing, reflecting my conviction as she broke free enough to grasp my hand, the warmth of it burning against the clench of despair. But as our hands met, another wave erupted, a monstrous figure clothed in shadows filling the void, a titan bent on obliteration, ready to reclaim its sacrifice. "Ah, how sweet it is!" it roared, voice laced with acridity, twisted laughter erupting through the obscurity. "Join us, or fade away, lost amongst the bitter dust." The ground shivered beneath us, and I felt the rending pull of the abyss as my heartbeat synchronized with the echoing despair. A ruinous ballet of solitude and surrender. But Sarah's grip was like iron, grounding me amidst the tumult, reminding me that light could ignite even in the deepest darkness. And then I felt something awful within me, a creeping chaos, palpable and alive. The darkness, fierce and twisted, began to pour from the depths, surging like black, viscous oil around us, engulfing everything with every pulse, every breath. It wanted to claim us both, our unity wavering under its crashing waves. My spirit threatened to unravel as unholy tendrils encroached on us, swallowing each flicker of hope. "Hold on to me," Sarah pleaded, but the shrill cry of despair bore in my mind. "Whatever you do, don't lose yourself." In that instant, the shadows surged, a living tide demanding conformity, tempting with promises of forgotten desires and cravings long slumbering. Everything slowed as the familiar pulse of darkness beckoned treachery, an urgency that twisted my sanctity, forcing me into a choice that trembled on the precipice of a never-ending void. "Sarah," I shouted as the darkness roared, ready to claim us whole. But the words weren't mine to speak. The tide crashed down, our connection straining against eternity's hold, as I was swept into a maelstrom with no escape, bound either to everlasting doom or ultimately, an unfathomable truth lurking within the shadows of despair. And just before I succumbed to the swallowing darkness, a sharp glint caught my eye, a flickering firefly, defiant in its brilliance, slicing through the murky blackness, illuminating my path ahead, and revealing the true face of the horrors that waited just beyond. In that fleeting moment of clarity, I screamed, feeling the tendrils of despair wrapping around me like vines, trying to tear me apart from within. The choice was upon me. Fear was clamoring for dominance, yet something within ignited fiercely, stirring the ember of rebellion. And then, the darkness split open with a searing intensity, revealing the truth too horrific to bear. In the aftermath of the chaos, the darkness gaped wide, revealing visions of horrors draped in an unsettling silence. Pulsing figures writhed at the edges of the void, their forms shifting and unrecognizable, distorted reflections of those who had been lost to this unholy maw. Whispers crawled through the air like insects, chittering unintelligible sounds that clawed at the edges of sanity. Those icy fingers of despair that had coiled tightly around me began to loosen. I felt the ground pulse beneath my feet. "Sarah," I bellowed. My heart raced, a frantic drum echoing through the stillness as I fumbled for her presence. But as I turned, the haunting specter was pulled back into the shadows, a thin ribbon of light tethering her to me, stretching painfully until it threatened to snap. "Don't let go," she cried out, her voice haunted with fear, echoing like a melody drowned in sorrow. The grotesque laughter of the monstrous figure sent ripples of terror cascading through me, a reminder of what awaited beyond our fragile connection. "Yes, child. Embrace the despair. Give yourself to the shadows. You are already fading." With those words, I felt my sense of self begin to peel away. Surrender was tantalizingly close, an escape from the torment that gripped my heart. But Sarah's flickering essence remained rooted in my mind, an unyielding spark that threatened to ignite everything. As I focused on that connection, the last vestiges of our shared light, I stumbled forward, daring the obsidian waters to rise against us. "We are stronger together. Fight with me." The shadows recoiled at my fervor but surged back, more furious than before, twisting into sharper, more sinister shapes. I could see the faces within them, grotesque manifestations of those who had lost hope. They reached out with gnarled fingers, clawing at the exposed pieces of my soul, only for my light to blaze defiantly against their encroaching darkness. But as Sarah and I grasped onto the luminescent thread connecting us, the figures within the shadows shifted, coalescing into a crumpled portrait of someone I recognized, a face I thought had melted away into oblivion. My heart sank. It was my mother, eyes sunken, pleading yet devoid of knowledge, whispering a name that sent a chill through me. Evelyn. With each step forward, the other shadows began to shift into the faces of fallen friends, forgotten enemies, and even strangers I had wronged. Each call echoed of a time when I had failed them, igniting guilt that bleached the light gathering in my core. The ground quaked beneath my feet, threatening to swallow me whole as memories of my past coalesced with their tormented cries. "Do you see?" The darkness hissed, swarming closer, suffocating the air with its weight. "Let them consume you. Accept your past and what you are." "No," I yelled, the strength of my voice challenging the very fabric of this reality. You don't control me. But the brutality of the darkness was overwhelming. Tendrils lashed out, dragging at my legs, squeezing hope from my chest like a vice. Each scream echoed the agony of my choices, each face a reflection of unfathomable pain, a gallery of grief I had unwittingly amassed over the years. But just as the shadows pulled me toward the brink, I remembered Sarah's brilliant eyes, how they reflected love amidst despair, illuminating a way through the dark. My will ignited with renewed fervor, illuminating the recesses of my mind trapped in spirals of regret. "Sarah, hold on," I roared, and I lunged forward as the shadows enveloped me whole. Together, the cacophony surged, a deafening roar vibrating through the air, as the light exploded forth, a brilliant white-hot energy piercing through the encroaching dark. There was a moment of silence, everything around us freezing, until the roar of the abyss shattered like glass, reforming into a whirlwind. In the howling tempest, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, a sliver of hope glimmering against the black tide. But then the monstrous entity reformed. It was more than a mere darkness. It towered over us now, pulling energies from the very earth, eyes glowing with unholy hunger. "Come, sweet child," it breathed, voice like molten steel, oozing malice. "Join the embrace of annihilation. Let it wash over you, and know peace." Around it, the faces twisted into wails of agony, merging with my own doubts until they filled my mind, threatening to drown out Sarah's piercing light. My grip on her waned, the tether fragile as I sensed a new reality coiling around us, its pull oppressive and imminent. "Sarah," I screamed as I felt her essence flicker against the onslaught. But as shadows surged toward our bond, threatening to sever it, another figure flashed in the darkness, stepping forth, illuminated by a light beyond comprehension. "Enough!" the newcomer shouted, a voice like thunder, stitching itself through the shadows like a righteous blade. But as the darkness whirled around us, chaos erupted. I watched in horror as the new figure was wrested away, swallowed by the looming shadows, its light snatched away without mercy. "Such light!" the monstrous voice mocked. "But you will all be mine soon enough," the words rang out, morose and laced with a chilling finality, just as the wave of darkness began to collapse inward, and I felt the abyss shift, a new dimension unfurling beyond comprehension, something new and far worse, waiting eagerly to take us both. As the grip of despair coiled tighter, I knew the choice loomed once more, and in the tremor of my heart, I could hear the shadows whisper a promise, hoping to extract my truth at last. What would I sacrifice to save her? What would I relinquish to redeem myself? "Make your final choice." The abyss howled, a terrifying crescendo resounding with dread, and just as I prepared to plunge into the unknown, something screeched, a maddened cry of pure rage that shattered the precipice of reality, leaving me teetering on the brink of an infinite darkness. With a final breath, I stepped back into the abyss, knowing that whatever lay ahead was only the first step of a monstrous journey. And the screams resumed, ever louder, as they echoed my name through the chilling veil. The darkness enveloped me, and for a fractured moment, I felt weightless, suspended in an existence that stretched beyond comprehension. The echoes of my own name whispered through the void, an unyielding charm laced with dread, pulling me deeper into the chasm of despair. Tendrils of anguish curled around me, serpentine and cold, leeching the very warmth from my soul. "Make a choice, lost one," the voices hissed, a chorus of despair woven into the symphony of shadows. I clung to the flicker of Sarah's presence, her light the only beacon amidst the swirling abyss. But it was fading fast. The moment stretched infinitely as I grappled with the weight of my failures, the faces of the doomed rising like specters in the fog, reminders of what they once were, and what I had allowed to become of them. My heart raced with the incomprehensible truth that my past had come to entangle me like the creeping vines of the long-forsaken haunt I once called home. Each face that emerged from the shadows bore the scars of betrayal and longing. But one visage stood out amongst the rest, a familiar fiend etched in my memory, a friend lost to the depths of savagery during our reckless youth. "Evelyn," it was a soft whisper, intimate yet charged with the bitterness of vengeance. The air felt electric, filled with a tension that pushed at the edges of reality itself. As the whispers surged, igniting flames of guilt within, I realized this unrelenting presence was just one more weight strapped to my soul, one more nightmarish echo I had to confront. "Why did you abandon us?" came the anguished cry from the abyss, and the shadows drew closer, their hands clutching at my limbs, dragging me toward the dark well of despair. "You wanted to forget, to escape the truth." "No," I screamed futilely, but the shadows laughed in wicked delight. "You can't escape us, Evelyn." Their grip tightened, a vice twisting at my core, and even as I fought against the torment, breath grew labored with each unholy touch. The darkness knew my soul, every doubt, every regret laid bare as it pulled me into a memory long sealed away in the recesses of my mind. I was forced to relive the day I had failed my friend, the day the last vestiges of my innocence shattered in the wake of our reckless choices, leading to untimely loss. A vision birthed itself from the void, a night illuminated only by the moonlight spilling like liquid silver over the forest floor. The trees loomed tall and menacing, and in the distance, I heard the laughter of friends, a shrill, beautiful sound that ripped into my heart. "Let go," a voice cried, and I turned eyes wide with panic. There she was, my friend, pale and trembling, begging for help as the dark tendrils curled around her ankle, snaking upward. "Please save me," she shrieked, her voice distorting into the cacophony of grief, loss, and regret. I could feel the familiar sensation of heat, the warm press of tears against my cheeks, tears of frustration, tears of helplessness sizzling into nothingness. I tried. I yelled, desperately reaching for her. The void pressed in, but I clawed through the ether, fighting with all that was within me. "I'll always be here. Fight it with me." "No, you must choose," she screamed, her body ensnared by the darkness, the shadows tugging at her like a fisherman reeling in a prized catch, until her form began to dissolve into the night. My heart twisted with each passing second, each fleeting connection threatening to snap against the reality that loomed all around us. With every pulse of despair, the truth became a blight, and I felt it growing inside me, a creeping realization that the entity thriving on our pain knew everything, cradling our darkest moments and threatening to expose them to the chilling winds of absolution. "Don't you long to let go?" it crooned, its voice a slick whisper that curled around my thoughts, sending tendrils of icy dread shooting through my veins. "Your friends have called to you from the shadows. They wish to save you from yourself. Surrender." I could feel the truth at the edges of my consciousness, bubbling, rising, threatening to consume me whole. My knees buckled beneath me as visions of the deceased gripped my throat, their pleading eyes unearthing the guilt buried in the depths of my heart. They were echoes of laughter stifled by silence, stories unfinished, and friendships torn asunder. "Sarah," I screamed into the void, but her light felt like a flickering candle struggling against the growing darkness. The shadowy figure twisted and convulsed, mocking me as it drew closer, until I could feel its icy breath prickling the back of my neck, with desperation clawing at my throat. I thrashed against the shadows that enveloped me. "Sarah," I roared, and in that moment, the energy splintered like fragile glass, a roaring wave of light and shadow clashed ferociously. And just as I thought I could see her again, the whirlpool of darkness swallowed the remnants of my scream. It changed, all surged toward one central point, one tragic fact strengthening the diabolical grip on my very essence. In the eye of the storm, I strained to understand the being looming before me, ignorant of its dark secrets. Its presence weighed heavy, a taut string of dread vibrating in the air, a cell within a cell, a prison forged of madness awaiting my demise. "Will you forsake what's left of your fragile heart?" it murmured, a devilish glee twisting around its words. "You can be free. Embrace the shadows and be reborn, Evelyn." Just when I thought I would shatter under the weight of the truth, I felt a spark, a bolt of electric resilience that pierced the heavy silence. It spread from my pounding heart to my fingertips, unfurling like a wildflower in the black ash of despair. I held onto it desperately, the glimmer of hope igniting resolve against the hunger that surrounded me. "Together, Sarah," I cried, and as I strained toward the flickering light, the shadows shrieked, a horrifying cacophony filling the void, merging with the screams of my past. Their hands gripped my ankles, but I pulled fiercely away, dragging Sarah's light even closer to my heart. Enough! Enough! I bellowed in defiance, pushing back against the veil of horrid malignity that sought to smother my resolve. But the darkness writhed, a living tapestry as it began to envelop everything around us, congealing with a voracious appetite and encroaching tide of nightmares reborn. But in its center, something seemed to thrum like a heartbeat. Then let us see what lies beyond the veil. The entity hissed, and I instinctively braced for impact. Just before the shadows consumed us, I twisted and felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of agency amid the swirling chaos. I held on to it with every fiber of my being as the darkness swallowed my surroundings whole, and the last thing that flickered before my eyes was Sarah's light, growing smaller, as shadows danced dangerously close. And then I felt the unholy rupture. The ground trembled violently as I was hurled down a never-ending spiral, falling into the black, each plummet an eternity characterized by sounds I dared not comprehend. As I screamed, adrenaline coursing through my veins, the shadows receded, but before I could catch my breath, an unsettling silence fell, ruptured by the waning echoes of my own voice, and the chilling realization washed over me I was not alone in the dark. Something monstrous lurked just beyond my reach, ready to consume what I had left. The dreaded presence loomed close, and a whisper stirred, seductive and serpentine, slithering through the air and cloaking itself around me. Welcome home, Evelyn. My surroundings reshaped themselves in an instant, a mercurial shift from the madness of shadows to a chilling, palpable calm that felt as though the world had pressed pause, each sound and movement caught in a web of silence. I lay on rough stone that scraped my palms raw and breathed in the dust-laden air that tasted of metal and decay. For a moment, sweet relief washed over me. I was free from the oppressive grasp of darkness. But the absence of sound heralded a new kind of terror. My thoughts raced, sprinting ahead in instinctual fear. Where was Sarah? What had become of her? I struggled to rise, yearning to hear her voice or feel the flicker of her light. But the emptiness weighed heavier than the void I had just escaped as I pushed myself off the ground. My hands slid along the rough surface of the stone, and I could feel it churning beneath me. The ground pulsed with an eldritch heartbeat, strong yet sickly, resonating in my bones. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach, that a wall loomed at my back, ancient stones slicked with moisture. It felt alive, expanding and contracting, as if the very structure was breathing. Tentatively, I placed my palm against it. A chill raced up my arm as visions sparked in my mind, dark corridors, the stench of rot, figures shifting in and out of sight. Shadows. They had followed me here. The air thickened, charged with a spectral energy, sending waves of nausea rolling throughout my body. As I blinked into the oppressive gloom, I tried to discern any shape amidst the fading remnants of my last moment. Unease skittered across my spine, urging me to flee my spectral prison. Then I saw it a flicker in the distance, just at the corner of my vision. I turned, heart hammering. It soared, weaving around me like a snake, gripping tighter and tighter until I could barely differentiate between light and dark. The presence shifted again, darker, feasting on the frayed threads of my sanity. I screamed, but no sound emerged, only an echo of anguish reverberating in the cavernous depths. I spun back to the wall, desperately searching for an escape, some crevice through which I could flee. Instead, I found a rift, dark and beckoning, a gaping, slimy maw yawning in the stone. My heart trembled with morbid curiosity. This was not the path to freedom, and yet, my feet moved of their own accord, inching toward the rift. The weight of my choices pressed down on me. Memories of Evelyn and Sarah, the faces that haunted me, twisted with betrayal and loss, screamed within. Evelyn, the specter whispered, a persistent lullaby filled with anguish, forcing its way into the recesses of my mind. We are all waiting for you. We need you to remember. The walls of the cavern narrowed as I approached the abyss, a dark abyss beyond which lay unyielding unknowns. Then, a flash, an image bloomed within the fog, a small face, vivid against the encroaching dark. Sarah, her bright smile radiating warmth, and yet, shadowed by the grief that took her too soon. "Don't forget," she implored, her voice echoing through the void. "We're counting on you." Before I could respond, the echoes transformed, filling the cave with laughter growing more sinister with each syllable. Each burst of sound a painful stab that cleaved through the darkness. I clapped my hands over my ears, writhing against the swell of memories that swarmed like angry bees. A burst of energy surged through me, revulsion mingling with exhilaration in equal measure. I stepped into the rift. The moment I crossed its threshold, prismatic vines wrapped around me, slick and clinging, dragging me into the depths of despair. Walls of darkness closed in, and I was swallowed whole by the shadows. That I landed hard, hitting the ground with a thud and a gasp. Chest heaving, I pushed myself up, pulling my body into a seated position. Where had I been sent? A cacophony of whispers slithered around me, a tide of desperation slapping against me like icy waves. From the shadows, shapes began to congeal, human forms twisted and distorted, crying silently the lost souls of my past. Their faces stared at me with hollow eyes, expectant and accusatory, rippling with unfulfilled desires. They reached for me, fingers extended, seeking solace as they hovered just within reach. "Help us," they chorused, a dissonant echo intertwining with the hollow sounds of memory. Each syllable wove a tapestry of torment that ignited the dread clawing at my heart. That I sprang to my feet, panic griping every thought. Behind me, the rift pulsed, and a chilling realization dawned: this could not be an exit. Hordes pressed in as the whispers grew louder, throbbing against my skull like a relentless drum. "Remember," they pleaded, their voices a twisted harmony of anguish and need, tightening their net around me. "You owe us. You left us." I stumbled backward, shaking my head furiously. "No, I didn't mean I—" A piercing laugh echoed through the chamber, reverberating off the cold stone walls. It was my laugh, distorted and twisted, morphing into something far more sinister. My heart sank as a shadow surged forward, the source of the voice I had tried to escape, revealing a familiar figure cloaked in darkness. "Do not feign innocence here, Evelyn," it hissed, lips pulling back in a mocking smile. "You cannot drown out the truth and expect to emerge unscathed." With each step it took toward me, the shadows recoiled, twisting and warping into grotesque circle after grotesque circle, bringing the tortured souls along reminders of my past, begging for release. I turned and ran, the cold grip of dread chasing me down endless corridors made of despair, the very hallways of my own making. I spotted a glimmer of light in the distance, the promise of hope within this hell. Narrowing my eyes against the shadows lapping at my heels, I bolted toward it. But as I neared the light, fear gripped my throat like a vice, a single scream echoing within me. Would the evil never relent? Just before I reached the illumination, something flew out from the shadows with a force that knocked me to the ground. Stunned, I gasped, the brightness dimming as I looked up. What horrid apparition had risen to confront me? And as the world twisted once more, the horrid laughter echoed. That teasing, maddening, raspy cadence made it clear. The nightmare had only just begun. The darkness settled heavily around me, a suffocating blanket woven from nightmarish threads, and I fought to catch my breath, the stale air filled with the stench of decay. I scrambled backward on the cold, unyielding floor, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a desperate, caged animal. The shifting shadows danced, mocking my fear, their twisted forms gnashing teeth that weren't there. My legs trembled, grasping at memories I wished to bury, and instinctively, I pressed my back against a rough stone wall. Footsteps echoed through the hollow chamber, uneven and slow. Shadows lengthened and flickered, each one alive, whispering secrets I dared not understand. I fought to steady my breath, but the effigy of dread clung to me, an amorphous mass that threatened to swallow me whole. Then, out from the mass of darkness, a figure emerged, not the grotesque mask of the nightmare I feared, but a wretched semblance of Sarah. My heart plummeted as she stepped into the light, her features twisted in anguish, her once bright eyes replaced by hollow voids similar to those of the other lost souls. "Evelyn," she called, a frantic rasp that cut through the oppressive shadows. You have to remember. Here it's all happening again. A chill coursed through me, the gut-wrenching sight of her pale form pushing me to my feet, staggering toward her as though she possessed the key to my salvation. But as I reached for her, she recoiled, and the ethereal light that surrounded her wavered like an echo caught in a restless tide. Don't. You have to stay away, she cried, panic rising in her voice as shadows conspired around her. It'll consume you too. Don't you see? The whispers grew frantic, surging like a tide around us. Fear clutched at my throat, the cries of the lost souls piercing the illusion of safety I thought I had found. A voice, deeper than despair, rolled from the shadows, intertwining with Sarah's words, a serpent of sound that coiled around my mind. It is too late for her, it growled, the thing slithering from the darkness, a shape melded from fear itself. You have called on this fate, Evelyn. This is where you belong. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the rhythmic pulsing echoing the weight of unfulfilled regrets as I turned toward the sound. The very stones seemed to warp, undulating in sync with the creature's beckoning. No, I screamed, desperation surging. You're lying. I don't want this. I lunged for Sarah again, but the distance carved between us yawned like a bottomless pit. Fight it, please, she pleaded. Her form shimmered as if she were caught between worlds, fading in and out. I could sense her anguish, an agony I had tangled with, but now it resonated deeper than the fear, deeper than mortality itself. But the overwhelming energy began to coalesce into an ancient evil, its form shifting and writhing until the very fabric of the chamber rippled in response. Shadows flickered in primal chaos, their collective howl rising to a crescendo. Each wave of sound cut into me, each taunting breath chased away any flicker of hope I possessed in a surge of adrenaline. I sprinted for Sarah, ignoring the tendrils of darkness that wrapped around my ankles, yanking me back. Memories crashed into me like shards of glass. Moments both cherished and cursed tore through my mind. Evelyn's laughter, the warmth of summer sunlit days, the chilling cries of loss from those I had let slip through my fingers. I reached for Sarah, surrounding us with the tendency to protect, so hurtful to reject. But the shadows churned violently, slamming against an invisible barrier dictating my existence. Evelyn, Sarah screamed, her expression morphing into one of sheer terror. You're not alone. Fight them. You need to remember. But what should I remember? The truth rushed back in flashes. It was bright and overwhelming, pushing aside the veil that concealed it all. I saw visions of my past, whispers of the friendships lost, and the love I shattered. I understood now. It turned against me. The thing that imprisoned us, it was my own crafted torment that brought me back. Your sins brought you here to the void. It hissed, the shadow grinning with the weaponized dread. You will all face her again. Would you dare deny her? You are all we have left. With renewed vigor, I screamed against the darkness. My voice crescendoed into the tunnel, pushing through despair, transforming it into defiance. I refused to succumb. I can't abandon her, any of them. And suddenly, a blinding light exploded from within me, diminishing the shadows momentarily as bright rays of kaleidoscopic energy fought the darkness. I lunged toward Sarah, determined to reach her through the barrier that threatened to consume us both. But just as I touched her ethereal form, the shadows recoiled violently around us, and the anguished laughter returned, an avalanche that swallowed the chamber in merciless thunder. Before I could comprehend the horror that lay ahead, a truth fell through the fabric of reality with a weight that pinned me down. I heard it, clear as day through the cacophony, as the voice burned my consciousness. She will never truly escape. In that instant, the ground rumbled beneath us. Chaos erupted, the air crackling with energy as the connections snapped like fragile glass. I was thrown back, and as I spiraled into the depths of the void, the tether to Sarah severed, and somehow, amidst the thunderous sound of laughter that reflected off every wall of the abyss, I realized I was still alone, trembling in the dark, and something else was watching. Something far worse than my nightmares, something eager to greet me in the shadows. A shape emerged from the depths, cloaked in darkness, its smile wider than before, eyes glinting like shards of glass. I had certainly awakened a new horror, and I gasped. For I knew this creature was no figment of imagination, it was something darker, something waiting for the right moment to devour me whole. The cold seeped into my bones as I sat alone in the suffocating darkness, haunted by echoes of reverberating laughter, sharp and cruel, that clawed at the edges of my sanity. The overwhelming sense of despair wrapped around me like a shroud, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, the memory of Sarah flickered in my mind, a phantom of light trapped in the shadows. But as I sat there, the weight of guilt squeezing my chest, I began to feel something deep within me stirring, a primal scream clawing its way out, a desperate fight against the darkness that loomed closer and closer. I gritted my teeth, determined not to let the memories consume me completely. I could still remember what I had done, how I had failed to save her, but now I could feel the darkness willing me to embrace it, to be a reflection of my failures. Join us, dear Evelyn. The creature's voice echoed through the void, seductive and comforting, yet honed with daggers that gleefully danced in the air. You're not alone in this. We can grant you what you seek: acceptance, freedom from that aching truth. It slithered closer, its eyes glowing like two smoldering coals in a dark fire. But the anger surged with ferocious intensity. I won't give in, I screamed, battling against the phantasmal grasp of my tormentors. Memories surged like tidal waves, faces, moments, laughter, all dragging me down into a vortex of regret and loss, irretrievable echoes of the lives I had touched and discarded in pursuit of my own joy. Suddenly, a figure erupted from the depths, a siren silhouette gliding through the dark, light fighting to escape from her very form. I stared in disbelief, a breath hitching in my throat, before understanding washed over me like a cold shock. Sarah, I gasped, reaching forward. But the sorrow-drenched shadows clenched tightly around her, and I realized they were entwined in malice, a reflection not of the friend I had lost, but of something far more sinister. No, you must run. It wants to take you too. Her voice rang with urgency, a stark contrast to the monstrous laughter filling the air. The memories of our childhood echoed back, every shared secret, every fallen tear in an explosion of clarity. Realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. The darkness feeding on sorrow was a reflection of my own mind, conjured from the depths of grief that I had refused to confront. Suddenly, my pulse roared in my ears, every heartbeat pulsing with familiar courage. I stood tall against the shadows, anger rallying in my chest, and hurled myself toward the shimmering silhouette of Sarah, unwilling to lose her again. A blinding light flared around us, momentarily parting the oppressive darkness as I lunged forward, desperate for connection. I can save you, I cried, but at my words, the shadows recoiled, sweeping around Sarah like a furious tempest. Oh, Evelyn, she howled, her voice breaking against the tide of despair. The darkness hungers for your light, let it consume you. Let it end. But my resolve deepened. No, I shouted, and with every ounce of strength I had left, I grasped her hand and pulled her into the light I conjured, desperate to keep her warm glow alive. The shadows howled in anger, a deafening chorus of tortured souls drowning out all consciousness. But just as I thought we had escaped, the void literally trembled beneath my feet, roots of darkness reaching for us, manifesting into gnarled and skeletal hands grasping at my ankles, trying to pull me under. I could feel myself slipping. The cold seeped deeper into my soul. A moment of clarity hit me, cutting through the haze, a realization that if I let the darkness have me, if I succumbed to despair and doubt, there could be no salvation for either of us. The tendrils gripped harder and urged me to give in, to drown in the endless void of my own making. Hold on, I bellowed to Sarah, gripping her with a ferocity that both terrified and thrilled me. We can fight it, we have to fight it together. But even as the ground beneath us crumbled, memories resurfaced, those darker moments, choices hardened into discourse that clawed at me, pleading for absolution. But I couldn't relent. I forced the memories through the gaping maw of despair, channeling them into the light, becoming the very embodiment of my guilt and pain. And as my essence merged with the illuminated thread between us, I saw Sarah's spirit flicker, brightening as clarity raced through her eyes. Together, We screamed into the abyss, a fierce determination cascading from our voices like ripples on an unfathomable lake as the darkness shrieked and flailed around us. I summoned every moment of light I could remember, the unconditional love, the unbroken promises, the memories of joy interlaced with heartache, and thrust them into the void. But this time, the void fought back. It twisted and brayed around us, ravenous and unrelenting. But I felt Sarah's warmth flickering still, urging me onward. Just as our bond began to fray, the shadows coalesced into one monstrous form, looming above us like a nighttime specter, the culmination of all my fears, regrets, and failures. "You see?" it hissed, mouth stretching impossibly wide. "You belong to the darkness. Come, accept the truth of your past." "No," I screamed, pinning all my determination into one final burst of brilliance. And with a dazzling flash, I pushed deeper into the tether that bound us together. In that moment, I felt a surge of clarity, raw and blinding, rippling like light through the darkness. And then silence. Everything stopped. Shadows exhaled their desperation, and just for a heartbeat, it felt as if time hung suspended in the balance. I was perched on the threshold, an investigator into the terrain of my own subconscious, the choices I had made culminating into a singular force, grounded in the realization that the darkness was a part of me, an inextricable facet of my being that I could never fully escape. But as the shadows began to dissolve into light, a new awareness unfurled within me, a twisted truth that delivered no mercy in its wake. "Sarah, you have to wake up," I murmured, but with dread knotting my stomach. I realized she wasn't reacting. Her eyes stared blankly ahead, and the tether we had clung to flickered ominously. "No," I gasped, wrenching in despair as the flickering energy dimmed further, shadows reaching from behind her once more like glistening claws, ready to snatch her away again. I fought forward, blood pounding in my ears, but now it was Sarah who began to vanish, slipping through my fingers, and I felt the coldness wrap around me quickly, ready to embrace the depths of despair once more. "Join me, and become one with your forbidden truths, embrace your fate." The creature's voice silked through the air, and I felt a strange connection numb my bones. I cried out, every drop of light lighting my insides, coaxing me into one final sacrifice. "No, I want tea. No," I screamed, thrusting myself backward against the looming shadows tearing at my legs, struggling to hold on. The air thickened as they pushed toward my heart, devouring every flicker of hope as I felt my senses slipping. And then an even greater realization struck me. "It's not over," I bellowed, the words tearing themselves from my mouth like angry flames. "Whatever this is, I choose to refuse." Suddenly, our bond surged to life as if ignited by a lightning strike, and explosive energy coursed through me, lifting my despair, transforming pain into distilled strength. I continued to grasp Sarah with every ounce of my remaining will, her terrified expressions igniting my heart with determination. But my effort shattered like glass. The dark deity was growing stronger, fusing those memories, a vortex drawn tightly around us, exploits and consequences manifesting in myriad forms, and suddenly, blooming faces emerged like flowers in the darkest void, reflecting my own, desperate, forgotten truths. And as they connected, another memory darted to the forefront, a heartbeat, a final blip of conscious thought crumbling against time. With a surge of longing, I pressed down within myself, a desire to reclaim the heart of Sarah, to bring forth my greatest secret to the surface. I turned my gaze back, broken and battered, but infused with defiance. Embracing the shadows, not relinquishing, but overpowering, I managed to blend the scattered reflections, a kaleidoscope of feelings, of laughter and ghostly cries entwined within the chains, aching against memories forged anew. "You are not forgotten," I yelled at the entity looming before us. "Time bends in the light, reflects in the dark, but if you consume us, you will never cease to exist." An echo murmured through the void, merging with shadows, mimicking my final roar, and the brilliance surged forth again. But shadows gathered, screeching in agony, and beneath my voice, I felt their clawing grasp strengthen, but no more. As embers erupted, I allowed the festering fear and inevitable darkness to meld with my own light, a surrender as I drained every ounce of that radiance, coaxing forth the dormant warmth. I turned towards Sarah instantly, It's now or never. We have to come together. Surrender to the dark. The entity screamed, but within its warnings, I heard the truth spilling from the past, a reflection of my own beating heart, tangential yet resolving to rip apart the shadowy binds. Together, I cried once more, and Sarah's light erupted in response, an explosion that enveloped everything, surging out into the very core of shadow itself. The light swallowed the tendrils wrapped around us. The darkness recoiled with a hollow wail, collapsing under the weight of every connection I had forged in defiance. With one final pulse, I burst through the veil of despair into warmth, brushing against frozen tendrils that shrieked against my warmth, the final tolling echoes of sorrow and pain revealing themselves, scattering into oblivion. But through the darkness that once tormented me, I felt something shift, a flicker of relief igniting once more, swirling through space as the thing behind us, the darkness that hungered within, let out a cry before crumbling into an inconceivable multitude of light, refracting into crystalline shades and then silence. As I opened my eyes, I laid sprawled against the cold stone once more, gasping for breath. And yet, a comforting sensation enveloped my limbs, a rich warmth substituting the chill I had once felt. I was home. I turned, heart racing in anticipation, lips trembling as I murmured, "Sarah?" Before me, she stood gazing back, tears streaming down, her features restored to the girl I had known, illuminated in a soft, inviting glow. A bittersweet smile graced her lips as she shrugged free from the night, her laughter cascading through the atmosphere, binding us together once more. But as my pulse quickened with hope, a realization struck hard at my core: none of this was over. The echo of darker truths slithered in the distance, creeping closer as the shadows receded, that hungry void whispering into the night. As I turned back to face it, its presence absorbed every light that sparkled against the horizon, melding seamlessly. Beneath the starlit sky, knowing the fight had only just begun. "Let them come," I whispered into the night, my heart stealing with a dawning sense of inevitability. But before I could blink, I heard the raspy voice curl through the air one last time: "You can never escape those who haunt your soul." And with that chilling reminder, the darkness lingered, waiting, ever patient, ready to take what it desired most, me.